normal people become terrified of criminals.
Shots were just fired. Police just came out and told us, and we're headed there right now.
They become terrified of their own government.
A college friend of mine, Wendy Long, decided to run for the Senate. I begged her not to. I told her that she was, would lose terribly, but she goes, I want to do it. So I go, okay, I'll help you. I gave her $10,000, which is the campaign finance limit. But what was happening is I'd put out a new film on Obama. I was traveling all over the country. And you know how it is with a friend of yours. She's like, oh, Dinesh, can you come and meet these Indian doctors? I mean, they're Indian, you're Indian. We want to raise some money here. I'm like, oh, Wendy, I'm in Dallas. So I felt bad. So I told two of my friends, listen, do you like Wendy Long? Give her $10,000. I'll reimburse you. So this was my crime. I exceeded the campaign finance law. And look, I did, right? So I should get the same penalty as anybody else who did that. But normally that penalty is nothing. Or at the most, it's community service, a warning, especially if it's a first-time offense. The key to the campaign finance law is you're not doing a quid pro quo. Like, hey, I'll give you money, but I want you to make me a judge. Then you're getting something corrupt out of the deal. This was not the case here, not even charged. So that was what my case was about. And the U.S. government would have liked to have locked me up for more than as long as they could. But 2 years was the sort of statutory maximum. So they were going for it. They had a Clinton appointee judge. I mean, the whole thing was like a show trial.
Who was your
And he
judge?
made you get re-educated.
Berman in New York.
Berman?
Yeah.
Oh, in New York.
In
not
New York,
here.
so
It was SDNY, the Southern District of New York.
Oh, wow.
So it was Eric Holder, but operating through an Indian stooge whom I nicknamed Indian head waiter, Preet Bharara, a guy who's had a lot of notorious cases.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so on top of all this, right, so this is a crime that, as you mentioned, people normally will get community service for, or it's not prosecuted.
Well,
and not only do they
well,
send you to
but
prison,
what was
but
the-
they have
what
you
was the
do
resolution?
community service. And I'm sorry, they have you do re-education, basically.
Re-education, a big fine. I mean, when I told people I had 5 years probation, there were guys in prison who were like coyotes, drug smugglers. I mean, people who had been for rape, and they were like, I got 2 years. They couldn't believe it. And I had great difficulty. One of the key things about prison is, like, what are you in for? And part of the problem was I felt like I might, make all these enemies because none of them believed what I would say. They're like, whose money did you take? I'm like, no, I didn't take anybody's money. I gave too much of my own money.
And they're like, this guy's lying. We can't trust him.
What did you? How much time did you end up?
So
serving?
I was 8 months in an overnight confinement center. So I was free in the day, but I checked in at 7 at night, and I would check out at 7 in the morning. And I slept in a dorm with 70 hardened criminals on a bunk bed.
Did you make friends?
I made some acquaintances, perhaps not friends, but it's a window into our criminal justice system.
Yeah, it's a unique experience for sure.
It's a very unique experience.
Although maybe not really. A lot of people are incarcerated.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted you, Seamus. What did you?
Yeah, well, no, I just want to mention this because what you said is it would have helped you if people on the left would have stood up for you when you were the victim of an obvious political prosecution. What's very sad today is when people on the right are victims of political prosecution, people on the right won't even stand up for them. We've gotten to that point.
Prior to your case, who was politically prosecuted before you? I feel like you're the first kind of high-profile one, at least since the turn of the century.
It was the first case, but interestingly at the time I saw it as a one-off. I mean, I did not see it as a prelude to Carter Page, Papadopoulos, Roger Stone, Michael Flynn, Trump, because the way I saw it was, okay, I made a movie on Obama. It was emotionally damaging because I went to the Obama family homestead. I interviewed his brother. I made it kind of personal. And I'm like, I know this guy's a vindictive narcissist. So I should have known there's going to be a big target on my back. But I didn't see the institutional creep that has occurred. The escalation under Biden of the police state has taken me by surprise.
Do you feel like you were sort of a test case? They were seeing how they could test the law and apply it in this kind of scenario?
Yeah, I thought my case was a one-off where Obama, and this is funny because I go speak on campuses, right? And people would be like, I'd be like, I was targeted. And then people go, well, what makes you think Obama watched your stupid movie? And I go, well, the movie was in 2,000 theaters. And when the movie reached the second most successful political film ever made, I was being attacked every day on a website called BarackObama.com. So that's kind of where I got the wacky idea that maybe Obama didn't like my film.
Yeah, exactly.
Crazy
Even if he did, it's like
theorist.
if somebody makes a film, if someone makes a documentary expose on you, explaining all the things wrong with you, you don't have to see the movie to not like the person. Like, it's not like Obama would have to sit down and be like, I disagree with this film. Like, Dinesh, that was bad. But like, people around him are like, he said this and he showed your family in this light, and that's all you need.
Obama went after the Tea Party.
That's
correct.
right.
The IRS started
did
unjustly
under him, yeah.
auditing them. And then we also know that Barack Obama charged more people, whistleblowers and journalists under the Espionage Act than all of the presidents combined. They call him Obama. I believe that Barack Obama may be one of the worst presidents. One of, in my lifetime, I think he's the worst. And
Worse
a lot
than
of people.
Joe?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Joe may be heavily influenced or puppeted by Obama. But let me say this. I know it's kind of tough because you got W. Bush, you got Iraq, you got Afghanistan, it just horrible things, and you have like Bush's attempt at Presidential Directive 51, if you guys are familiar with that. But Barack Obama has like the National Defense Authorization Act, indefinite detention provisions, the persecution of journalists, the extrajudicial assassinations of American citizens. We have what he did to you. We have what he did to the Tea Party. And, honestly, the list goes on.
Well,
bombing civilian targets.
Crossfire Hurricane.
How about Fast and Furious?
He knew all about it.
Obama-
Fast and Furious sending guns to cartels.
This is the most protected man in American history. And part of it was the first black president. That gave him an immediate sort of halo. And he's also one of the most ruthless. So I think
And he's still around.
Yeah, and now he reflects a tendency that's broad on the left, because you can tell whenever you're looking at stuff that the leftists do, they know that they are above the law. When Jamal Bowman pulled the fire extinguisher, he removed the signs. I bet it never crossed his mind, I'm going to be arrested, I'm going to be locked up, I'm going to be held for 3 months.
He was probably insulted when he got arrested.
Yeah.
He was probably-
Do you know who I am?
Yeah.
Or look at those protesters. What was it? In which building? Was it the Cannon building?
House office building,
I didn't see the slightest fear in their eyes that they're going to come in here, drag us to the floor,
Dinesh,
put us in solitary. They knew it was never going to happen.
Do you think Barack Obama is a leftist, or do you think he's a bad liberal?
No, I think that this is a guy, and I've done a lot of work on Obama.
That's why I asked.
I think this is a guy who is haunted by anti-colonial demons that came from his father, and his father was a very intoxicating. Well, he was intoxicated. He was drunk, but he was also a very captivating personality, a complete con artist. In Kenya, for example, he would frequently show up at public events pretending to be a minister of this, a minister of finance. He'd be up on the podium giving a speech when the real minister of finance would walk in the door. I mean, there's a comic aspect
And then
to
he'd
this.
have him arrested. He's faking it.
Yeah,
I see that in
joke.
Obama's brother. I see that in
yeah,
Malik.
and Obama, and he abandoned Obama at birth, basically. And paradoxically, Obama was obsessed with the father he never had. He goes down to Kenya. He goes to his father's grave. He has this kind of voodoo experience at the grave. It's all in my film, by the way, 2016, Obama's America. Obama's a very interesting guy, and I think part of what put me onto him was I had been seeing him through a civil rights lens. This is a guy, his background is like Montgomery, it's Selma, Martin Luther King, and that's how he was being portrayed.
Yeah.
And then when I read his autobiography, Dreams from My Father, I was like, oh, wow, this is really more like the India I grew up in. All the Indian intellectuals talking about anti-colonialism and the British. I'm like, this is the soil in which this guy was cultivated.
So you think he's a leftist then?
He is a leftist in this, we're talking about Hamas, decolonization, Israel is the colonial power, little babies are settlers. Yeah. That's Obama's ideology.
He's a smart guy.
He's a smart guy.
You can't underestimate.
No.
I mean, the degree to which he has been influential, the authoritarian grasp, and the things that he's been able to do are shocking.
Well, you have Lisa Monaco, who was a longtime loyalist of his. His last Homeland Security advisor was Chief of Staff to Robert Mueller, and where is she now? She's the Deputy Attorney General. You have Avril Haines, who also was a top deputy for Barack Obama, and she is now Joe Biden's Director of National Intelligence. And of course, then you had Susan Rice, who was the domestic policy advisor for a long time. So he is the only president who has remained in Washington, D.C., and now we know from reporting that you have Biden administration officials and Democrats going to their mansion in Kalorama and meeting with him. So he still is highly influential in this administration and
think about it this way.
overall.
If Obama decided it is important to me to move Biden out and Kamala Harris out, don't you think that this would then become a top priority for the Democratic Party?
But do you think that's why
It's gonna
Biden
happen.
is running again? Because Obama ultimately wants him to stay in office so he can continue to have control?
Well,
Because I don't think the DNC wants Biden at all.
So we have this line, I think it's one of the best lines in Police State, where Darren Beatty's talking, and he goes, in a police state, he goes, you normally know who's running it, right? Who's running China? Xi. Who was running Cuba? Castro. Who was running the old Soviet Union? Stalin. But our police state, says Darren, is a little opaque. Biden is in the canoe. He's obviously a willing accomplice, but who's steering the canoe? We don't know. I mean, this is a country right now being run, in my view, by some kind of a junta.
Yeah.
There are powerful people who are making decisions. Biden is cooperating with them. Obama may or may not be directing them, but I think it's the Obamaites, it's the Obama gang that's running it. And in a way, Biden's very convenient because, I mean, think about it. You bring in you bring in some strong-willed guy from California, Gavin Newsom. He's going to want to run the show. He's going to want to give orders.
He's got a future ahead of him.
He's got a future ahead of him.
Biden can't be the candidate. He can't be the nominee. I mean, there's this really great clip we have from a Joe Rogan experience with The Rock, where The Rock says, look, I got friends who support Trump. I got friends who support Biden. And then Joe goes, you actually have friends that support Joe Biden? And he goes, no. Good check. He's like, that context matters. I have friends who support the Democrats.
The reason that they can't have him though is because of the gaffes that he's likely to do that are going to likely get worse. Not because he won't listen or that.
No. It's because. Here's what I wonder, that the reason why they wanted Biden to be the candidate in 2020 was because they needed a sacrificial lamb. Whoever they put in place had to reverse policies Trump did that worked and made us feel good. And that's going to cause a lot of hurt. Whoever does that is going to suffer in the polls and in favorability. So we need someone who's not going to run again. All we need is your corporeal form, Joe Biden. That's what the article said. Remember that one from The Atlantic? Stay alive, Joe Biden. All we need is your corporeal form.
I think you're right, but I still think that the risk of having Joe Biden run again is because a failure on his part, a mistake, an error, shows that he's not the guy running the show.
Well, that's what I was about to mention. Dinesh, you made this point about the U.S. almost being this strange kind of puppet state where we don't actually know who's in control behind the scenes. And this is something people always speculated might be the case. But then when Joe Biden came along, it just became obvious that at least in this administration, that definitely has to be the case. There's no way this guy's making decisions. He does not know he's the president. I'm sure he forgets half the time, more than half the time. The man's completely out of it. I mean, he's in steep cognitive decline.
It was pretty clear that there were times when Donald Trump would try to get something done and the bureaucracy itself would be working against him.
And they admitted it.
And they admitted it. And I think with Joe Biden, it is clear that whether or not Joe Biden says the right thing, the bureaucracy already knows what's going to happen. I mean, he said it himself. They'll get mad at me if I say that. What do they want me to do? He speaks like that regularly.
Julie, what do you think about the Biden's chances in 2024?
I don't.
You gonna vote for him?
I don't think he's going anywhere. And if he wanted to, there's no way that Dr. Jill will let him leave the White House because she wants to stay first lady more than I think he wants to be president.
You think that she has?
There's no way.
What do you know about
he's like begging her to let him
input
stop?
and her machinations of towards power or whatever? What do you know?
She wants to be first lady. She wants to stay first lady. She wants to insulate that family, which they are to a degree. Obviously, they are because they're still in the White House. I don't see any way to get him out of there. He's not going to leave voluntarily unless, he dies.
Look at the people
there's no way.
Look at
He's
the
not
way that the
leaving
Democrats with a straight face, and there's got to be a little part of them that's a little sheepish in saying this kind of stuff. But I mean, recently you saw on MSNBC, someone goes, well, Biden's more articulate than any functioning 45-year-old, right? I mean, for someone...
That is sad for 45-year-olds.
Yeah, for someone to say that with a straight face, But with Democrats, they can count, and Fetterman's the same. They can count on a level of media rationalization, media protection that is just that will go to insane levels to defend these people.
And I think they have gone out of the way to present themselves as like the best family they could, partially because they have so much baggage. Looking at you, Hunter. I mean, look back at Naomi Biden's wedding that got her spread in Vogue, and the first picture you see is her and her grandmother Jill cuddled on the couch. They are trying to say we are this like ultimate American family, and we are restoring the White House to this nice place. And
look at the intellectual jujitsu where you got a family racket, and then they come out and go, well. I mean, this shows you that this man has just an absolutely immeasurable love for his kid.
Right.
And even when his kid...
Well,
that's right.
He's a family man. You got a mob boss?
No, this Vogue shoot that I'm referencing, it's interesting because it was like right before Tiffany Trump's wedding at Mar-a-Lago, but also Hunter's nowhere to be seen in it, right? The Bidens are basically trying to pass themselves off as this nice set of grandparents, skip a generation, and then they've got all these granddaughters, forget the grandsons. You know what I mean? Like, it's a weird family, and they ultimately do these things to be palatable to the American people, to seem glamorous and desirable, and to stay in the White House.
So do you think Jill and Joe have kind of like a Bill Hillary thing going on here, where she's actually pulling the strings and he's just the face of the organization? Because he's honestly not a very good face, right? Like, Bill Clinton has many flaws, but he had some charisma, so I could understand why someone like her would attach herself to him in order to try to get her goals.
In the 90s, he was maximally charismatic
and,
in the 90s.
Still horrible back then, still a horrible man, but
he was in charge.
Joe was
Clinton
never
was
charming.
In charge, right?
But like, Joe sniffs children. Constantly.
Joe Biden was very charming. I mean, that's how he got where he was. That's where he got where he is.
He always seemed like a phony and a blowhard. Even when I watch old clips of him, he just seems like a phony and a blowhard.
That works
He never struck me as charming. He didn't.
Yeah, in his younger days, he had a frat boy quality. By the way, similar to Clinton.
Yes.
I think in the Clinton case, Hillary was sufficiently self-aware to realize that she could not make it across the finish line without Bill. So I think she signed up with Bill early on. She understood that this was a bargain because it was going to come with a lot of baggage. Bill was going to do his own thing. But Hillary was like, that's okay because I've got my eye on power. And in the end, if I become kind of Bill's cover-up man...
There are similar conversations had about Jackie Kennedy and JFK, that she was aware of some of his, less desirable qualities, specifically philandering, and that she chose anyways not to seek political office, but generally to seek social capital and power.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.